I'm Judith Peck, and the theme of this show is called Empathy. And when I was invited to have the show, I began to think of what kind of underlying theme would encompass this very large retrospective. It's about 80 works in this show. And so that's a lot of works and a lot of different time periods. But the one word I think that does encompass my theme, my passion, is empathy. Empathy deals with not only what's close to you, but what's far away. Right now, I'm thinking about Syria, as many of us are, the homeless people there, the people that must escape being killed on the street. And the burden of having empathy towards other people is severe, it's hard, and it's no fun. But there's a lot of fun and joy in empathy as well, because when your heart is open, it's open to other things. And the joys of feeling about other people, about sharing music and theater, drama, poetry, dance, this makes your world so much vaster than it might have been. So whether we see a lot of the burden of empathy, the pain and the promise of thinking about others, or the joys, the kind of funny things that happen in life, they'll all be in the show, I think, because the theme is underlying all my work. This sculpture is called Refugees, and I did it around the time of the terrible things that were happening in Kosovo, the refugees leaving the mass killing of men and boys, and it was a very sad time in our lives. Here, the two people are holding their child and all the possessions they own on their backs, and in his hand is his identity. He is holding the papers that make him who he is. The idea of not having any identity except what you can hand to somebody else is a very, very tragic thing. I once got off the train when I was coming from Minneapolis to Newark, New Jersey. I got off in Chicago, and I just wanted to see what it would be like to get off the train and walk in a street that no one knew me, where I knew no one, and to see how I felt about that. Well, it was a very, very interesting time. I ended up staying at the Y, the Women's Y, and boy, did I get on a train the next morning as fast as I could. It was terrible to be so unknown. So here we have this family fleeing a terrible place, trying to find a new future someplace, and only identified by the papers that he holds in his hands. This sculpture is titled The Man-Woman Thing. And as you can probably guess, she is deciding how she's going to be to face the day. What kind of person will she be? Aggressive, manly? What will she choose in order to achieve what she needs to for the day? Or she should choose a very feminine approach that's more natural to her. Sometimes it's more effective too. So this woman is deciding to choose what kind of person she'll be for the day and how she will get along. Somebody had mentioned it's also on wheels. It also looks like her closet. And I thought that was very clever because all those things apply. These are two very different pieces. On my left is Job, the biblical Job, and on my right is Reclining Woman. Job is afflicted with anything that you can imagine, physical travail, mental travail, false advisors who are trying to help him but are very inadequate at the task. And over on my right is Reclining Woman, very much at peace with herself, very satisfied with her body, with her sexuality, looking out and ready to go forward. Two very contrasting times in all of our lives. This is Women in the Sauna. And this was inspired by my own trip to a sauna once, and I was amused by all the array of bodies that I saw around, and my own body amused me as well, and the concept that we are wrapped up in our bodies and we intuitively sense what we feel about ourselves through our perception of our bodies. The concept that our bodies give us the concept of who we are, what we feel about ourselves, whether it's good or bad, is with us all the time. We're literally wrapped up in our bodies. This sculpture is called Passage. It's a Holocaust memorial. It was commissioned by the Rockland Center for Holocaust Studies. And it's one of several Holocaust memorials that I have made. This sculpture depicts the train tracks, which are quite beautiful, glistening in the sun. In a way, they represent the people themselves, these beautiful, beautiful glistening tracks going up to a terrible, terrible place. Real wrought iron is hiding what's behind these, the buildings that they're going into. So a passage is kind of a moving memorial. I hope it symbolizes the beauty of the people lost to us so long ago and so terribly missed. This sculpture is titled Woman with Shoes Off, and I think I probably did it at a time in my life when I really was tired, exhausted. I had young children, 4 young kids, and you get home from a day and you take those shoes off and you relax, and many women today are doing just that, and more so, working full-time, coming home to take care of their home and family, and kudos to them. This sculpture is titled For Peace, and it was done at the time of the Vietnam War. It's an important sculpture because it actually was the turning point of me as a professional sculptor. And it's because it was my vision alone that accounted for the creation of the sculpture, and that's why I became, I think, a professional at that moment. What happened was I was going to Madison Avenue looking at art, and then I saw in a butcher shop these beautiful chickens simply hanging on a rack, and it reminded me instantly of how many missing, how many dead, how many missing, how many dead. This is what we were hearing on the radio and TV all the time about the Vietnam War. And these beautiful men, individual men, somehow it was turned into numbers. We were inundated with numbers. And I said to myself, this is it. This expresses what I was feeling, at least, about these numbers. And so I plowed through the chicken bin and I picked up 3 marvelous chickens. And I won't tell you the whole story about how I chose them, but I went home and I arranged them, and they were cast in the lost chicken process. And I got a rack, and it was a turning point for me. It wasn't how much hard work I would do. I was carving at that time, polishing my work, and it was very arduous. It took a long time to do this, and this was just my vision, and that's what changed me into becoming a professional from an amateur, because I relied on that. For Peace, Vietnam War. David is a sculpture I did when I was at Adelphi University as an undergraduate. I guess I was 19 then. And this guy was in my class, and he had a beautiful face. And I asked him, would he be kind enough to model for me? And he did. Very strong face. He became, I later learned, Minister of Education of the Congo, His Excellency. And so he had a hard time when I knew him, because he was engaged to a Caucasian blonde girl, and they couldn't find a place to live in those times. They finally did find a place in Greenwich Village, but it was a very difficult time for African Americans at that time. And yet he rose to become a very important person, and I was very pleased to be able to see him at 19 and do his portrait then. I was given some jade from California, actually. 2 big pieces of jade, and I found some granite in Rockport, Maine, and I created these pieces. They're carvings. This is Happy Head over here. I think it was a very successful piece. It's a very hard material to carve. You have to do it with special tungsten carbide tipped chisels, but it was a lot of fun. And here we have the parents under that, the husband and the wife, having their own problems. But these are carvings and polished afterwards in jade and granite. I was given about half a tree, a walnut tree, and I carved several pieces in it. This piece, called Girl with Earring, was inspired by the grain on the right side of the block of wood. And from that, I thought of the earring, and the head emanated out of that concept. From the same block of wood, I created a large piece called Race, and that's now in the gallery, the Yale Gallery of Art. And I created other smaller pieces from that walnut. These pieces over here were a collaboration I did, a collaboration with the bugs. I looked at my wood pile outside my house and I said, my golly, that's good material. And so they were just big chunks of wood. And I started carving them. And what I did was I found there was a lot of ruts in the wood made by bugs. And I began to carve away the ruts, and I found the bugs, and I got rid of the bugs, and I carved some more, and they all evolved, some more deep than others. Some became polished, actually, but this one is I called Twin Towers. That one is called Flame on the right, and over that is just a torso. A lot of carving had to be done there. That bug was a very, very enterprising young fella. These are more polished ones here. And this is mother and daughter. I had to polish these up after I had carved them, but the bug was very compliant in creating this lovely form with me. And over here is I Love You, Warts and All. And I kept the actual configuration of that branch. So I'm very pleased to be able to collaborate with bugs, and I hope to do some more of this. This sculpture is called The Dark, and actually there's a story behind this sculpture. I was carving a big chunk of ebony, this piece, and the phone rang, and I answered it. And I had a conversation with someone in which I said something rather stupid, I think. I don't remember what it was, but it wasn't brilliant. And I was very angry at myself when I hung up the phone because I should have been more brilliant. And so I got to that sculpture, this big piece of ebony, and I began to hack that thing. And I hacked it because, you know, anger at yourself is the worst kind. It's so much easier to be angry at somebody else. And so out came The Dark. And this is what emerged from that session after the phone call. So I thought it was quite interesting to see how passion can affect the artwork. And in this case, it did. Well, this series was inspired by the onions, flowering onions. And now I'm doing an awful lot of flowering onions. It's a rather whimsical series. The ones on the right were cast in stainless steel, and the others are cast in bronze with found objects alongside them. The New Jersey State Museum exhibited the ones on the right in stainless steel, and these others are rather recent. We have the two old guys sitting in rocking chairs next to each other. This one is young apple supporting old onion. And then we have conflict over here, two onions fighting over something in the middle, which you don't know what it is. This one is bug dining with onion on the table. And then we have the embrace, the beautiful hand holding the onion on the end. There are many different titles we can give to these, but they're all in homage to the flowering onion that makes life so delicious for us on the table. The sculpture is called Invented Self. And what I did here is I sat for actual x-rays of my head. And these are x-rays of my own head. And the thought came to me, there is nothing permanent about me. Everything is always chosen. This hat, this hair, this lipstick. And the only thing really permanent about me is my skull, my bones. And I guess even those are not so permanent when you get to be a little older as you go on. But Invented Self is all about that. Well, this sculpture is called The Housewife. And I hope that I was able to show the housewife is so much more than that word would imply. She's got her sexuality, her secrets, her halo inverted at the top of her head. She's got her neat little apron on with a cute little perky bow tie at the back. I just wanted to show the housewife in all of her many dimensions. These three sculptures here are maquettes or models of pieces that I made much larger. The one on the far right is called Continuity, and that's located in two places. There are two casts of that. One is at the Tenafly High School in Tenafly, New Jersey, in the courtyard, and the other is at a temple in Baltimore, Maryland. And it depicts the father and son with the book, or the teacher and child with the book, but learning from one generation to another, from teacher to student, through the book, and that's how we gain our knowledge and traditions. The center sculpture is a maquette or a model for a Holocaust memorial also. This one is called Resettlement, and Resettlement depicts a family being led to the camps where, of course, 6 million Jews were exterminated along with other people. And the mother is following the father. He is leading them unfortunately, to their death. The child, though, is looking out. The child is the future. The child will tell the story of the Holocaust, and he is looking out. This sculpture called River Flow, I did in styrofoam, the same size, very large in styrofoam, and it was part of a book that I was doing on movable monuments to be able to show how small people like me, who can't carry much weight, in terms of steel, can still make very large monumental work. So I did it in styrofoam, and I covered it with fiberglass and resin, and it was too light for the elements. It was completed, but it didn't withstand the elements, so then I did it in steel. I had it actually welded in steel. This sculpture, One Man in Memory of 6 Million, is my homage to the Holocaust. It was installed here in fiberglass in 1973, and just recently, in the end of 2012, was purchased to be in the collection of Ramapo College and to be here permanently by Yvonne Lorber, in memory of her family, the Mannheimers, who died and perished in the Holocaust. So I'm very pleased that it is now on the campus all the time for students to be able to walk up the path and think about this horrendous time and perhaps do something so that it never happens again. So this is One Man in Memory of 6 Million.